Good afternoon, everyone, distinguished delegates. I'm delighted to have you here for Thematic Track 2.2, Diversification and Decentralization of Energy Sources. My name is Kyle Dada. I'm the Executive Director of Asia Pacific Region and Energy for Teneo, and I'll be your moderator today as well as one of your speakers. I think, you've heard from this morning's plenary the importance of the vulnerabilities in our energy system, even as we're trying to accelerate more renewables and in the face of both geopolitical change and a great deal of energy growth. So we put this together, not just diversification, but diversification and decentralization. And I think the argument we're going to make to you today is that you need both to really have a secure energy system. We're delighted to have speakers that will give you perspectives from the utility perspective on this, the regulatory perspective on this, the industry perspective, and the technology perspective, all wrapped up into one. So we encourage you to use your app to ask lots of questions. We're going to have, after the speaking part, a panel discussion that we want to be very vibrant and very interactive with the audience. And we're delighted to have actually our scene setter. We're so happy to have her here, Sydney Cisneros Tiango. That is actually the director of ADB, the Emerging Areas Group, which she says is actually covers a lot of the fun projects, but in reality, it covers many of the important technologies and the new innovations that are so important to really make the grid and the new energy system work. So I'm going to invite her up to start and set the scene, and then I'll invite each of the speakers up accordingly. Thank you. Give a warm welcome to Sydney.
Thank you very much, Kyle. Good afternoon, Excellencies, colleagues, and partners. I think we are in for an exciting session today. So as we open this session on diversification and decentralization of energy sources, let me start with a simple reality. Energy systems across Asia and the Pacific are becoming more complex and more exposed. We are seeing rising demand, increasing share of variable renewables, and growing vulnerability to shocks, whether from extreme weather, technical faults, or supply disruptions. And in this context, resilience is no longer just about building more capacity. It is about how systems are structured and how they respond under stress. A powerful reminder of this comes from Sri Lanka's nationwide blackout in February 2025, which will be presented shortly. A relatively localized fault triggered a total system collapse within 20 seconds. Sorry to talk about this already, leaving the grid down for 4.5 hours and requiring days of recovery. Critically, this was not just a single technical failure. It exposed deeper structural challenges: insufficient frequency response, lack of system flexibility, and the unintended effects of distributed rooftop solar disconnecting during disturbances, removing 77 megawatts of generation at a critical moment. The lesson is clear. As systems become more renewable and more distributed, system-wide vulnerabilities can propagate faster and more widely if not properly managed. This is where diversification and decentralization come in, not as abstract concepts, but as practical strategies to manage risk. At the system level, diversification matters. As highlighted in the grid control presentation, which you will hear shortly from Atsu, power systems today are shifting from large centralized plants to highly diversified portfolios, including renewables, storage, EV charging, and virtual power plants, all interacting dynamically across the grid. So this diversification improves resilience by reducing dependence on any single source, but it also introduces new challenges: lower system inertia, more variable supply, and greater complexity in maintaining stability and control. In other words, diversification must be actively managed through better forecasting, storage, advanced control technologies, and stronger operational frameworks. But diversification alone is not enough. We also need to rethink where energy is generated and how it is delivered. So this brings us to decentralization. Across cities in Asia, we are already seeing how decentralized systems strengthen resilience in practice. We will see examples from across Asia. In India and Bangladesh, it shows how rooftop solar, battery storage, and community microgrids are being deployed to support municipal services, transport systems, and even emergency infrastructure. And at the city scale, planning approaches are integrating microgrids, distributed generation, and climate-resilient infrastructure directly into urban design. These examples illustrate a critical point. Decentralization does not replace the grid, it complements and strengthens it by localizing resilience and reducing the impact of disruptions. So when we bring these ideas together, the value becomes clear. Diversification reduces exposure to system-wide risks. Decentralization reduces the impact of disruptions when they occur. Together, they create systems that are not only cleaner, but more flexible, adaptive, and resilient. But achieving this in practice raises important questions, many of which this session will explore. I'll be quick. How do we integrate distributed energy resources without compromising grid stability? How do we design markets and regulations that incentivize both system-level diversity and local solutions? How do utilities adapt to operate increasingly decentralized and dynamic systems? And how do we ensure these approaches also improve resilience for the most vulnerable communities? So these are real, immediate challenges, not future concerns. So, and the presentations today will take us deeper into these issues, grounded in real-world experience, operational lessons, and practical solutions. With that, let me invite our speakers to share the insights on how diversification and decentralization can help build stronger, resilient energy systems for the region. Thank you. Enjoy.
So I'd like to expand on some of the morning themes and also some of the themes that Cindy just described to talk about energy system security under extreme adversity. Because I think that's what we're facing now in the world, and we have to start to think about how do we design our systems so they are going to be reliable, stable, inclusive, and secure. So I think it's clear that the Iran war, but also the Ukraine war, have elevated energy security to the top of national and corporate agendas. There's a threat of both conventional and asymmetric physical attacks on energy infrastructure. And these issues, which were once unthinkable, the door has now been opened, as it were, Pandora's box. They're additive to the cybersecurity issues and the resilience issues around severe weather stress that we were already starting to grapple with. Now we have more to add. So distributed energy resources within a decentralized grid architecture are keeping the lights on under extreme adversity, and provide you two case studies to give you a sense of that. One from Ukraine, which is really around conflict. The other is from Puerto Rico, which is around climate stress. But first, I think we need to define our terms a little bit. So all dimensions of energy and security risks now needs to be addressed. And I think energy insecurity is going to be the enduring legacy of these two conflicts that are occurring now. So let me break it down into the criteria that we have to design the system against. The first, sadly, is actually physical attack to critical energy infrastructure, either using conventional or asymmetric warfare. Utilities had already thought about terrorism effects. Now we have to think about state actors. Second is the physical disruption of energy complex supply chains. When I say complex, I mean oil, gas, LNG, the petrochemicals, LPGs, the full complex, that are either from transit bottlenecks or manufacturing bottlenecks, which is about the components, which includes the critical minerals, but also other components, whether they be transformers or generators or things that we have long lead times in supply chains. So these disruptions are now also part of energy security. One of the challenges we're going to face as we increasingly digitize is cyber risk. So I want to take a moment to reflect on this because we have to balance what we're trying to achieve with the cyber risk. And that's to both the grid, to all the new renewable technologies, to all the consumer appliances and just demand response systems. Digital grids are vulnerable to hacking. I think the US experience with Full Typhoon, the cyber operation to try to acquire personal credentials on US grids, which is really the intention, frankly, of in a future war disrupting the grid. It's a concern now for all the countries around the world to recognize that that's a challenge. You know, we're going to be shifting to more and more inverter-based technologies, battery-based technologies, and while there's less risk of malfeasant hardware inside, we still have to worry about the software and the telecommunications and control systems. Then all utilities, everything we do has to be wrapped around a cyber umbrella to create protection around consumer distributed energy resources and devices that are integrated to the grid, which we need for the kind of instantaneous demand response that we'll be talking about in terms of balancing front of the meter and behind the meter. Then, of course, we're all keenly aware now of geopolitical risk from the concentrated fuels or critical minerals that either face tolls, tariffs, force majeure, or outright denial. And then climate risk has gotten more severe. You should look at the recent UN study on this. The direct costs last year were 500 billion. If you take the indirect costs, it really rises to 1 trillion. And so that's putting pressure on, of course, the least advantaged, because they're usually the most climate sensitive, as we saw from some of the other talks today, but also around the energy infrastructure and the architecture. So I want to ask two provocative questions to everyone. So first, why are the lights still on in Ukraine? They've been at war, they've been under attack, they've had now over 400 direct attacks on the energy infrastructure, which is extraordinary. So why is it? In fact, a good portion of the Ukraine actual power generation has actually been destroyed, over half. They started at 37 gigawatts. After repairs, they're about 16 gigawatts. So there's three reasons that that the grid is still operational. On the generation side, nuclear has been largely immune, but also solar has been centralized solar has been vulnerable, but also can be repaired relatively quickly and restored. So the second is actually the Soviets designed the Ukraine grid to be redundant, expecting American air attacks, not their own. And that has actually helped the Ukraine grid survive in both physical topology and analog layering, which is something important to think about for our future grids. But then the part that is relevant here is that consumers on their own, including businesses, small, medium enterprises, direct consumers, added 2 gigawatts of DERs to the grid, which include a combination of small cogeneration, solar PV, as well as BESS. And so that addition has really kept the lights on a day-to-day operational basis, even under all the attacks. And then the IEA has recently done a study to look at what's the cost benefit of creating a new system architecture based on DERs versus hardening. What they found is it might cost 15 to 20 billion more to build a more resilient system based on a DER architecture, but it actually lowers the cost of the total system in terms of fuel costs, and then it's actually cheaper than the hardening, which is running at $1 or $2 billion a year. So the key message on this is that DERs in the distributed grid architecture have proved resilient against extreme and continuous attacks, and they are developed by both the consumers and the utility. And I think this is the key lesson for Asia, particularly Taiwan, Korea, Japan, and the Philippines in terms of how we think through our future markets. Then I can ask the next question, same thing. Why are the lights still on in Puerto Rico? Because Puerto Rico, for those that don't know it, is sitting in the middle of our hurricane alley. So they get class 4, class 5 hurricanes literally every 2 to 4 years, which against their grid breaks the transmission lines that go north, south, and east, west that are providing the power from the generators to San Juan. So, and they've had decades of political interference and grid mismanagement that even after privatization has led to an extraordinary situation where you literally have 27 hours of expected loss load in terms of the grid failures, which leads to 35 days of loss load expectation and 154 hours a year of loss load hours in terms of grid expectation. So this is a relatively small system. It's a 3 gigawatt island system. And again, what's happened here is net energy metering residential customers and small and medium enterprises have added 1.2 gigawatts of PV. It's been almost all PV plus BESS. That's 2.5 gigawatt hours of battery storage using their own capital, about 4.6 billion in the leasing model based on consumer finance. So that's an extraordinary amount. That's 10x what the utility has been able to add during the same 5-year period. This impact this has had has actually reduced the reliability indices by about half of what they would otherwise be. That is, the loss load expectation has gone down from 36 days to 18 days because of the amount of BESS that's available in the system and also in the business model of a virtual power plant, which then saves collectively across all the ratepayers about $4.7 billion a year. So the lesson here again is that climate resilience and business interruption have driven consumer behavior to adopt mass-scale distributed renewables and storage that collectively then changes how the system operates to create reliability even against extreme climate stress. So the lessons to Asia, I think, are clear. This is really the future of our choosing. This is why we have an extraordinary panel here. We need to focus on both energy security and resilience. I think it's important that we not be ideological, that the system, energy system architecture probably matters more than the choice of primary energy. In some of these examples, they are using cogen, which is fossil-based, but also batteries and also solar. So, but the architecture is critical, and we'll have a number of speakers talk about distributed architecture. And that finally, that mass-scale distributed energy resources have proven resilient to both war and severe weather. So I wanted to set the stage for that perspective. And let me now introduce our next speaker, which is Samira Adikaram, he's the director in the Public Utility Commissions in Sri Lanka, and he's going to take a click down and dive deeper into lessons learned from Sri Lanka's 25 blackout. Thank you.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Samira Adikaram. I'm Director Licensing from Public Utilities Commission of Sri Lanka, which is the electricity regulator in Sri Lanka. So today I'm going to talk about the lessons we learned from Sri Lanka's 2025 blackout, which was occurred in February. And this is based on actually the findings of the investigation conducted by the Public Utilities Commission of Sri Lanka. So this gave Sri Lanka a wake-up call regarding being a high renewable grid. This national blackout occurred on a Sunday with a situation which has a situation of low demand and high renewables. So it was occurred on February, and the restoration of the system took more than 4 hours and 30 minutes. As a result, the system has been unable to meet total energy demand of 5.5 gigawatt hours directly due to the blackout, and due to this failure, another 4.6 gigawatt hours due to the rotational power cuts that we had to impose because of the unavailability of a large power plant, coal power plant, 900 megawatt plant. It was unavailable for 4 days because it got tripped during the blackout. So if I come to the sequence of event, the triggering event was identified as a fault in the 33 kV level of a grid substation in the western region of the country. And it was found that the system voltage has dropped by 40%, followed by another 20% due to this failure. However, this fault at the grid substation has been cleared within 1.1 second. And it was found that the protection system has operated correctly and within the set limits. Therefore, this fault should have been cleared as a local failure without making an impact to the total system. But, however, this failure has cascaded into a total failure. That's why we came in and decided to do an investigation. Despite the fault clearance, system frequency dropped to 49.5% from 50 Hz within 4.4 seconds, indicating insufficient frequency response. Then, later on, all 5 stages of under-frequency load shedding scheme activated, and it led to a cascade failure. Then finally, the total system collapsed within 22 seconds once the system frequency reached 40 Hz. As the system frequency has continued to decline and reached 49.5 Hz from 50 Hz within 4.4 seconds, even after clearing the fault, and since there is no evidence, we didn't find any evidence of any major generation failure which caused to this frequency drop. Therefore, the rooftop solar inverter data collected by the utility was analyzed by the commission in order to analyze the behavior of the rooftop solar during this failure. So through the analysis of the tripping logs of 1,618 inverter samples, it was found that majority of the inverters recorded a no grid situation. That means most of the inverters has gone off, tripped off due to no grid situation. And we found that 2.6% of the inverters has got tripped due to under voltage, which was happened during the first 1.1 second during the failure. Then, based on the analysis of rooftop solar PV capacities connected to the affected nearby grid substation, we found that approximately 77 megawatt of solar generation would have gone out from the system, and which could have led to the frequency drop during the first 5.5 seconds. Then at the same time, we analyzed the under frequency trip setting of the inverter samples which were collected. So even though the under frequency trip setting was prescribed at 47 Hz, it was revealed that 11% of the inverters were set at 49.5%. Sorry, 49.5 Hz. And a further 80% between 49.5 Hz and 48 Hz instead of this prescribed 47 Hz limit. Therefore, it could be determined that none of the inverter would have tripped due to the under frequency during the first 5.5 seconds of the failure until the system frequency reaches 49.5 Hz. But after that, significant rooftop solar capacity has got disconnected. We believe that after frequency drops below 49.5 Hz. So that has compounded into system instability. Then we looked into the other factors, other contributing factors which would have contributed for this cascade failure. So one is the inadequate frequency response from the other generators. So the under frequency, Victoria Unit 2 was designated. Victoria means a hydro plant. So that was designated as the frequency controlling machine which was balancing the system by that time. So the droop setting has been correctly calibrated, we found that, and sufficient headroom was available at the time of disturbance, but it has given only a minimal increase of its power. That means it has increased its power by only 4 megawatts. Even for this, so you can see the DAC records I have shown here. DAC means data acquisition records of Victoria Power Plant. So it has increased its power from 29 megawatt to 33 megawatt, despite the frequency drop is 0.62 hertz during the first 5.5 seconds. So therefore, that indicate the combined effect of the governor tuning, actuator response, and hydraulic dynamics were not adequate to provide the fast primary frequency support required under the prevailed low inertia operation condition. The desired outcome has not been given by that frequency controlling plant. As I have mentioned earlier, all 5 stages of under-frequency load shedding scheme have been activated in response to the system frequency drop. But the frequency has continued to decline despite all these schemes activated. So these schemes are supposed to activate and cut the loads when the frequency is dropping. During our investigation, it was revealed that the under-frequency load shedding scheme was last updated in 2018, and that was based on the dispatchable load visible to the system control center. So that is the central control center of our country. And we got to know that this desired output has not been given by that. So accordingly, so after doing this investigation, we published the gazette giving some directions to our licensees. So I have listed them out here. As my time has gone, I will keep it as it is, so you can read it later. And for distribution, generation, and transmission licenses, we have given directions to be implemented to prevent such similar failures in future in our grid. So these are the references. All the reports are available in our website. Thank you.
Thank you, Samira. I think as we go through, one of the things that we'll do is sort of summarize a bit the implications of that. But the implication of making sure that the inverters, the distributed energy resources, and the generation systems are really in sync in terms of their ability to respond to a disruption is very important. And also, so what happened in Sri Lanka, if you think about it, it's also reflecting what happened in Iberia and Spain. Different situation, that was voltage, but the same outcome in terms of policy changes needed to make sure both sets of equipment are operating in a way that's in sync with each other to respond to either frequency or voltage disruptions. So the next speaker we're going to have, we're very honored to have Matna Pashiva. She is the Business Development Manager for MSN Services. She has 25 years of experience in Azerbaijan. She's going to speak to us from the utility perspective on the building, decarbonization, building energy. Thank you.
Hello. Thank you very much for the provided opportunity. First of all, I would like to provide some information about the evolution of the energy system of Azerbaijan, how it developed its landscape, green energy landscape so far. It happened, I would like to highlight that it happened in the last 3 years. We have committed to build 8 gigawatt green energy supply sources, 2 gigawatt of which is going to be integrated into the grid by 2027. Moreover, after that, the occupation of the 2 major economic regions of the country, government of Azerbaijan committed to transform this area to green energy zones. And this is this is a huge construction site where everything is built from the scratch, and buildings, infrastructure, everything. And here, every building almost has a rooftop equipped, integrated into the grid, and on-grid connection to the on-grid connection rooftop technologies. And also for in these districts, almost more than 300 overall total installed capacity, 300 megawatt total installed capacity hydropower plants were commissioned, and it's not 340 megawatt is solar power plant is under construction, and 240 megawatt wind power plant is under design in the area. It's not only the thing that we are building the energy producing plants. We also did a lot of work in order to establish the regional trade of the green energy. As you know, Azerbaijan is one of the oil and gas exporting company, and now we aim to export green energy to Europe and South Asian countries, and by building the undersea, under Caspian Sea transmission line and under Black Sea transmission line, and connecting all these countries together on the line. Next, I would like to show you how government Azerbaijan does a lot of work to evacuate the green energy into the grid, and what are the what are the extent of the grid reinforcement works are being carried out presently. These are snapshots from the green energy landscape that are being carried out presently, and green trends are in action today. And these are not only concept in paper, we are in action. We are doing a great job, actually, in decarbonizing of the energy system. As I listed here, the power plant that have been completed and integrated into system, which are the power plants that are under construction. Moreover, oil and gas companies already thinking about decarbonize their energy supply. These companies, such as big companies, SOCAR, BP, and also big cement company, Holcim, they have already did a great job on installing on-site renewable energy technology. Also, green. We have launched a ESCO model, which is going to provide energy efficiency services, bringing the finance, technology, and solution into the market. And also, just recently earlier this year, 250 megawatt energy storage batteries were commissioned. That's all. But I would like to mention that all these solutions are provided at the utility scale in order to reinforce the transmission capacity, building their utility scale power plant. But demand side is underrepresented. Also, there is a huge potential, unlocked potential, which needs to be dealt with, and bring the necessary policy in, and in order to activate the process of distributed energy in the country. Buildings are in our country. Buildings take about up to 50% of final energy consumption. Still, this is a growing area of need, and the buildings are needed area for, and I have provided here the statistics for residential area, which is built before and after the 2000 year. And also, government of Azerbaijan is taking the experience of the advanced countries. We have committed to develop a national renovation program for buildings, and a significant amount will be invested for implementation of the program. standards has been adopted for conservation, but still standards has been adopted for rooftops, renewable energy, rooftop energy, which is alignment, but still not mandatory. And there is also another tool which will estimate them, enable estimation of them need capacity of the buildings for renewable energy technology, which is a mandatory energy audit, which is in use. Time to act is a now. And we have a favorable we have a legislative framework in place. We have a effective operational frameworks. We have a lesson learned from green energy zones, and now we need to act. What are the solutions? What are the solutions? Solutions for buildings are mainly rooftop solar energy technologies, solar collectors, domestic hot water, and heat pumps. For buildings. Recently conducted study reveals that there is more than 9 gigawatt technical solar capacity, rooftop capacity for 9 buildings, which is a result of the recently conducted study. Competitive, now I would like to highlight the role of the utility company, where they can come and bring their solution with having the competitive advantage in the market. They have access to data, the behavior, consumer behavior, and they have a good experience what kind of challenges they have, the customer experience from the green zones, and they have a qualified personnel and maintenance personnel. And the constraints are that they are going to take the dominant role, but it could be regulated somehow, and also it might kill the business of small companies, which needs to be regulated as well. And these are the main target companies, and I would like to highlight the not challenges but effective model for operation. Integrated design, build, and operate model, which is a mostly effective models that utility companies can achieve success in terms of their households. They're dealing with a distributed model. They bring finance, they bring technologies, they provide installation, they provide training of the household, they provide guarantee for uninterrupted energy supply, they provide a maintenance, distant monitoring services, providing the household to pay for the technology in installments, and the online support services, and one-stop sales shop, which is very important for customers to access one point, and which is already available in Azerbaijan. If you get Google, you'll find that Azerbaijan is one of the countries which provide integrated government services in one-stop shops, which is very successful, and the model is replicated in other countries as well. And utility services also integrated to this system, and we have established one-stop shops available. And the criteria for success: providing the pilot project, awareness raising events, affordable price, and also doing the maximum technology support for minimizing, preventing power outage, and also guarantee for technology, awareness raising, as I mentioned, and always, and the innovation is demanded, room for technology to grow, for complete adaptation. Multi-purpose technologies here could be very beneficial for households, acceleration of the acceleration with flexible design, of course. Thank you very much for your attention, and this is all from my side, and this is the contact numbers of my company, our company, and that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Matnat. That was so important. Because as all of you know, as in Asia, we are increasingly urbanizing. We're getting larger and larger megacities. So it's not just Azerbaijan where buildings are going to be the majority of the energy use. It's going to be actually many of the countries across Asia, and the ability to harness both efficiency, building flexibility, the rooftop space, and also the architecture around that is so critically important to this whole enterprise. Now I'm going to switch gears a bit. We're going to have Atsu Sakai come talk to us. He is the Senior Energy Specialist at ADB, focusing on emerging technologies. He's going to be looking at the question of grid technologies that we need for high renewable energy penetration systems. It's a very interesting and excellent presentation, so I look forward to all of us enjoying this.
Good afternoon, everyone. So in this presentation, I would like to share our some activities, the ongoing activities with our client countries. So this presentation would be more about the electric companies' points of view. So system, or we can call it transmission system operators. So as we have already observed, the last decades, we have witnessed the dynamic changes in the power grid. Previously, the power network was more simple. So the power plants such as hydro and thermal power plants generate electricity, transferred over the transmission and the distribution lines all the way down to the demand. So power flow was also just one direction. Now, thanks to the renewable energy sources, this direction has become more bidirectional. You can find the power plants even in the distribution grids. And further, also the number of the players also diversified. So we see the electrical vehicle. So now you can find the electrical vehicle charging stations along the expressways. So because of the diversified energy sources and decentralized the electricity energy sources, the transmission system operators are facing the significant challenge specifically to how to monitor and control the power supply quality. So here I would like to share some of the experience on how to manage and also the control, such as their grid disturbance through the proactive grid control using the high-level technologies. The key technologies may include energy storage like battery, and also the renewable energy forecasting system, and real-time monitoring system using smart technologies, and also the grid forming the inverter-based resources. So these are the main challenges which the power utility system operators are facing. So please bear in mind that my presentation might be a little bit too technical, so I can accept any questions after the presentation. So the first, system operators, they maintain the power quality by the grid frequency, because the power grid is operated by the AC current, so the frequency. But this frequency is sometimes dispersed by the loss of the power plants and also the fluctuating power output by the renewable energy sources, which generate electricity subject to the weather. And because of in order to meet the growing demand, we also need to develop the transmission line. But as you may be aware, acquisition of the land is not so easy. So this is another challenge, but this matter will be discussed at a later time. So here we are trying to explore how the technology can address these kind of issues. So the transmission system operators try to address these issues by high-level technologies, because some technologies manage low inertia and weak grid condition. And also some technologies also improve the voltage caused by such renewable energy sources and diversified and decentralized the electrical equipment. But this is just a kind of the selective list of such a high-level technologies, grid-forming battery, and one pack for the monitoring. And you may be aware of some of the traditional technologies like the synchronous condenser and the pumped storage. These are still valid for such a situation. And we have tried to categorize such technologies into the 5 categories by function. The first one is how to maintain the grid frequency. Second one is how to maintain the voltage within the standard range. And the third one is how to address such a challenge through the regional cooperation. And the fourth category is utilizing more the power relay and the protection system. And the last category is forecasting. So during our studies, we have also analyzed the advanced countries' practices. We have selected 4 economies, the Ireland, UK, Australia, and Europe. The message I would like to convey here is the selection of the high-level technologies should focus on the identified constraints. So different the constraint pattern or the issues would require the different combination of high-level technologies. So in case of Ireland, the country has the much higher share of the renewable energy, specifically represented by the wind turbines. And for this, the issues, what the approach the country took is the operating framework-led approach. So adopting the different approach as a kind of one package policy. So by doing that, the country has successfully increased the share of the non-synchronous power system. I mean, specifically the renewable energy sources from the existing 50% in 2014 to even 75% in 2022. So like the other parts of the world, the country also suffered from the low inertia because of the increasing share of the renewable energies. What the country took is to first identify what the issues and try to identify what portfolio, I mean the combination of the high-level technologies would be most effective. So therefore, they have to took largely the 5 categories of the stack. So that's when including how to procure such a service of the primary regulation reserve and how to utilize the battery in what situation, and likewise how to utilize the synchronous condenser. I don't explain in detail about such a service and the policies they have taken, but depending on such a policies, the country has selected different technologies such as synchronous condenser or the battery energy storage system. So again, by having such a portfolio approach, the country has successfully increased the share of renewable from 50% in 2014 to up to the 70% in 2022. The lessons that we can learn from their approach is first, the country needs to define what service is valid and how much it would affect. And secondly, try to monitor the data. And lastly, they identify the appropriate technologies which would successfully deliver such a situation. Thank you very much for your attention.
That was very, very helpful. And it was actually also reflected for those who attended the prior track, the same set of questions in terms of, as you get more and more renewables on the system, how do we therefore address the grid issues, which come in different timescales, from seconds to sub-seconds? That was wonderfully presented. So our last speaker is Nikhil Kosapatil. He actually is going to give us a very thoughtful presentation around the decentralized energy approaches for resilience using government-led approaches in municipalities. He's with ICLEI for Southeast Asia and leads their program there. So welcome him.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Glad to be here. So I am from Italy. I will be presenting on how in cities, how can we look at the energy transition and how can we do this in a more coordinated way. I'll be presenting a few case studies from our work as well. So firstly, ICLEI, we are a local global association of 2,500 cities and local governments. We work across the urban spectrum. We work through donor-funded projects and support cities, across different sectors. We also host the secretariat for the Asia-less partnership. So I will also be representing that network here. We are a knowledge platform. We again support, provide technical assistance to 18 plus countries in the region on, on the NDC implementation, sustainable energy transition, and so on. So I think this slide has been covered enough today, but especially I would say the energy security is important for the developing economies and also for the small island nations. We see that there is ambition in terms of the targets. And we also already see through the Asia-led partnership work that the requests for support which we are getting, which you can see on the corner in the box, that there's diversity in the type of requests that we are getting, the topics, the solutions that cities want to work on or they need support on, it's ranging across the board. In terms of urban, from an urban standpoint, of course, there are a lot of us in the region, so we hold 50% of the population, world's population. The way energy is being used, the way it is interacting with the local grid is changing because of renewables, increasing renewables, EV and so on, data centers, loads like that. There's of course implications because there are many of us, there's implications in terms of energy costs, affordability and other aspects. So what I will be speaking about is three approaches or opportunities of how we can look at urban energy resilience. The first one is, again, this is more from a city government standpoint or a local government standpoint that they themselves own a lot of infrastructure, they own assets across wastewater, water supply, all the utilities, street lighting, also public transport. So they've already, cities have started switching their public bus fleets in significant scales to electric. But they are also now integrating renewables in this. So in the case of the city of Ahmedabad in India, they have already transitioned and they are looking to replicate such solutions across different locations as well. Cities also, again, given the requirement and the continuity of requirement to provide public utilities like water, it is continuous. So there are opportunities, again, looking at waste, for example, as a resource. Cities have gone beyond biomethanation into also sort of looking at how bio-CNG can be produced. A lot of cities already are looking at diversification in their energy portfolio mix as well. So they're not only looking at solar, they're also looking at wind. That is because most of these facilities like street lighting, water, wastewater management, they sort of operate around the clock. And that's where there's opportunity for wind, battery storage and solar to come in. And they've already started taking efforts. They already have this in their mix and they're also looking to scale this up. The second opportunity approach is also looking at how sort of critical community services like healthcare, they can, we ensure that there is, they require electricity for operation so that there's sort of continuity of operation. They also, of course, have to transition to sustainable energy resources. So in the case you're shown here, like in Narayanganj, a city next to Dhaka in Bangladesh, the healthcare center in our part of the world is run by the municipalities. Most of them, they do have their own healthcare centers. So it was facing challenges with energy continuity. And this is, of course, not the sort of situation only in Bangladesh. Across the board, we see this. So solutions such as solar PV with batteries, they've helped ensure that operations continue and the community is sort of able to continue getting these services uninterrupted. Another aspect is just the climate protection of the local power infrastructure itself. So again, on the urban side, city governments are doing work on, having flood sensors so that they can have warning systems. They're getting this information. All this intelligence can be fed into siting and locating and, safeguarding the local power infrastructure. There's also a number of opportunities, we are seeing in Indonesia, in Bhutan, and in this case, that there are a number of large cities coming up which are being built from the ground up. So they are, of course, right from the get-go, they are looking at, large shares of renewable energy and so on, sustainable building design. But I think in this case, as you can see, the city is located on the banks of a river, and it is sort of prone to floods. And given the increasing risk of climate and the impact of climate, the intensity of rainfall is going to increase. So there's more flooding events expected. And in this case, again, disaster infrastructure like high capacity pumps is what cities rely on. And that does require energy, and that does require uninterrupted energy. So again, it also has benefits from a disaster resilience angle. I think the last opportunity is, also then looking at, so from a climate risk angle, this is a methodology that we typically use where we look at what are the different climate hazards like heat, floods, sea level rise, storms, which are relevant and applicable in a city. What is the exposure? What is the vulnerability of people, infrastructure, assets? So we get a climate risk map, which shows that at different neighborhoods or zones of the city, what is the level of risk? So in this case, the red and the orange zones are more at risk. So now if we overlay, all the digital information, geospatial information of power distribution infrastructure, we would get a lot of intelligence here. As an example, where is infrastructure really located in areas that are flood prone? Or for example, getting connections or interconnections like which are the areas which are hotter, and there we have urban heat island effect and other impacts, which has an implication on the energy demand, the cooling requirement. So all this can sort of also lead to judicious planning of energy and power infrastructure. So this is sort of the last slide and key message that in our part of the world, again, urban governance and energy or power governance is done by different institutions. So it is required that we bridge the gap. And that can also help sort of unlock or realize the full potential of urban energy resilience and the transition. And there's a need to have coordination mechanisms, of course, with digitalization, with smarter tools, etc. There's a lot of opportunities, and to ensure that the siting of infrastructure, the design of infrastructure, it's all dovetailed. It can be integrated into the city design itself. And such approaches, if we look at it from an integrated angle, they can lead to multiple socio-economic environmental benefits. Yeah, thank you. That's it from my side.
So I'm going to invite our speakers to come up. We're going to have a panel discussion with questions that you provided us from the audience. So please, all my speakers, come join me. And As we go through this, please, in the audience, feel free to add additional questions on the app, or if you have questions you want to follow up as we're going through, we have the microphones right there. So, and this is going to be a really a panel discussion as opposed to just a pure Q&A. So I want to start with the questions around the theme of policy and stability. One of the things that came up this morning in providing stable policies to help the industry grow. And each of you has spoken in different ways about things you believe can happen with the technology you have and how important they are. So I want to ask each of you, are there specific policies that you believe are important to forward this energy future? And Samira, we'll start with you since you actually had a slide on that you couldn't present. So we'll let you give you your opportunity now.
Yeah, I apologize for my time management because I couldn't present the directions of the outcomes that the directions we gave to the licensees. Actually, I'll explain 3 directions we have given because the process was like a legal process because we were mandated to do public hearings through our act. So we did the public hearing process. It's like a court proceeding. We can summon the relevant officials and get the evidence. So after getting the evidences, only we did this analysis. So from the analysis, after the analysis, there's a legal mandate to gazette the directions. So accordingly, we gazetted the directions, and one of the directions given to the generation licensee is to do their PID tuning in their generators to make the generators capable of arresting the frequency. That means to make it more frequency response. And another important one is updating the under frequency load shedding scheme, because the load shedding scheme has not been effective during this failure. So in that case, we directed the transmission licensee to revise, update the under frequency, incorporate an adaptive load shedding scheme. Adaptive means it should be dynamic to identify the distributed energy resources connected to the loads. So what has happened during the blackout was, so they were supposed to cut the loads when generation drops to balance out the system. But what has happened was the backfeeding, they have even cut the backfeeding feeders. So they have backfed from the generator. So they have worked as generators. So that has made the situation more worse. So in that case, on top of that, the other one is we have given a mandate direction to a distribution licenses to make sure that the inverter settings are as per the given prescribed setting. So they have to make sure that whatever the inverter settings implemented throughout their distribution network are complying with the given standards. So those are the policy directives that we have given as a regulator.
Excellent. And there's a follow-up question for you as well in terms of if you make changes like you're proposing and there are additional costs that are incurred on the system, who pays for those costs? Is it the solar providers? Is it the consumers through tariffs? Is it the utility? How are the costs socialized?
So most of these, whatever the directions I have mentioned, most of them are not much costly implementations. But whatever the costly implementation, whatever the investments that they are making, they can cover through the consumer tariff. So that is the normal mechanism in our country. So whatever the investment, whatever the cost they are incurring to supply the power, so we have cost reflective tariff. So that can be covered through the tariff. However, that will make sure that you have reliable power. So
excellent, thank you. Not you had proposed a model, design, build, operate for the utilities and buildings. Are there regulatory requirement policies that need to be developed so that model can come into existence or thrive?
For the case of Azerbaijan, I would like to emphasize that there is enough regulatory policy in place. and some dedicated program, as I mentioned, national renovation program is under development, but the process of and also at the same time we have a national energy efficiency fund has launched its operation recently, and they have a dedicated solution and subsidized grants and the pilot project solution for commercial public buildings. But main challenge remains with households, how they are going to be aligned into the whole design, whole integration. Here, the proposed solution was aligning utility companies. They with a new model of operation, and with bringing in technology, finance, and maintenance, all in one set. It could be adapted for social vulnerable people with vulnerable households, but here main risk taker need to be for the initial period, the utility companies need to take majority of risk on them, and after certain period of time, of course, as it happened with vehicles, government exempt them certain import taxes. Now, from this year, they resumed deducting import taxes for the electric vehicles. And the same with similar kind of incentives could be provided for households for their alignment into the system. Since it's not mandatory, but certain type of policies and incentives need to be in place to align them. It's somehow, you know, I saw the similar technology in the household shops. But once those technologies needs to be demonstrated. We have a policy for prosumers already. It is actively promoted, but it has been used only green zones. But this technology in green zones are invested by the government. Since it's a construction site, the buildings, all the infrastructure are invested by the government. But the main challenge remains with other part of the country, how these households will be aligned into the system and establish distributed energy supply.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.
Atsu, in the case study of Ireland, and as you start to look at how do you get these national systems to deploy these emerging these HILTs, these grid technologies, are there changes in the grid codes that are required? Do you need to create ancillary service markets? What's your policy prescription for how do you make that? How do you create the incentives for that to happen?
Thank you very much for the excellent question. That's exactly the driver to facilitate the adoption of this type of the high-level technologies. So first of all, the high-level technology is a kind of the new technologies. So therefore, the first thing that we need to pay attention is to the training of the operators. So capacity building is definitely the master item that we should pay attention first. But at the same time, we need to also procure these kind of materials through the procurement. So in order to prepare the bidding document, definitely we need to have the standard of such machines and how those machines would perform. We need to define. So for purpose, the government, especially government, needs to develop such the machines, technical standards, performance standards, and also the grid codes and the law and the regulations which would support the operation of such machines.
Excellent. Nikhil, one of the big challenges in resilience, which clearly we can see the problems, but are there, at the municipal level, are there particular good examples of regulations or innovations that have helped those municipalities really bring these concepts into real life?
Yeah. Yeah, sure. So from a climate perspective, I think one key foundation is, several cities now, they have their own climate action plans or, sustainable energy roadmaps. So which really underpin sort of all the targets, all the investment, the infrastructure design that goes in. And we have seen several cities, not only in South Asia, but across South Asia, Southeast Asia. So several cities have this. For instance, with ADB as well, we are working in Malaysia with 9 cities, where there's sort of a pipeline of that runs into billions of dollars for climate investment from the climate action, from the green city action plans, which are being developed. And this investment, sort of the funds and investment that is required, of course, that can be integrated also into the energy infrastructure. And so these tools are there. And along with this, I think also, so with this founding tool, of course, then you require sectoral mandates and so on, where maybe the municipalities, of course, they can look at having mandates for their own assets in terms of energy efficiency, renewable energy, also having green procurement guidelines for themselves, where these concepts can fit in. Also having climate resilience, infrastructure guidelines, and mandates. So some of these are being implemented, and they are useful tools, which can integrate all these, sort of put all the concepts into action.
That's excellent. That's really very, very helpful. I want to add as well, from my perspective, one of the reasons that Puerto Rico was able to achieve that level of community-based distributed energy resources, the integration of solar and batteries, is that the Public Utility Commission actually created a value for the lost load. That is, they said, here's the regulatory value for interrupted load, failure to serve, and that became part of the integrated planning process, so that normally the planning process requires just looking at how do you serve the load at least cost subject to a certain set of reliability criteria. Now they added the cost of unserved load to that, so that the value of having customer-sided resources that then fed back to the grid in a coordinated way to provide reliability when the generator plants went out or when parts of the grid went out, or the upgrades to the grid to make it more cellular, there was a cost-benefit analysis they could apply because they had created a regulatory value of lost load, which was a real innovation that helped spur a tremendous amount of investment. Plus, of course, as you see from both Ukraine and Puerto Rico, when customers start to repeatedly lose load, they act because technology works now. So but I want to share that regulatory innovation. Another question that came up, and whoever wants to answer on the panel, please do, is whether to do some of this work, whether it's at the generation side or the distributed side, do we need a change in control systems? Does the way the control room work change as you have more renewables and more distributed energy? So do you have a point of view on that? Do you want? Yeah. And then I have a point of view on that as well. I'll share with our other panelists.
So from my observations, the practice is different between the distribution grid, the more closer to the customer, and also the transmission stage, more wider the network. So in case of the transmission grid, the most useful the control is by a kind of the central control by the national dispatch center. They will utilize the dispatching the operation practice to make a command to the substation engineers and also the power plant engineers. And they have also built the SCADA system, which would enable the transmission operators to order and control such as the equipment. But on the other hand, on the distribution grid, the scale is a little bit smaller compared to the transmission grid. So therefore, the system operator, I mean the distribution system operator, would pay more attention to the cost effectiveness. So in that sense, what getting popular in this area is to customize the function of the distributed energy resources, specifically the function of the inverters. So I recall that in the US, the smart inverter system standard has been developed almost 10 years ago, and it has been addressing the issues happening in such a distribution grids like the harmonic, the intervention, etc.
I want to add for some of the work that we have been doing in California with Southern Cal Edison is that as you get more and more distributed energy, you change the control theory from centralized hierarchical control to actually pushing more intelligence out to the grid. So think of it as intelligence at the edge, and the control sits there. And that's a very important concept that changes the entire control theory of the grid. So it's a very powerful new thing. I know many of you came here instead of the AI conversation, but it's actually enabled by that intelligence. And you see in the new meters, actually, they're creating slots for that future AI, as well as for new utility grid assets to be able to manage that grid edge control. So that's one of the things that allows the system to flexibly respond immediately and autonomously compared to the latency of going to the central system and back. So I want to use our last couple of minutes to ask each of the presenters, and Matnat, we'll start with you and go to Samir and then Atsu. Just closing thoughts, a minute or so. What are the key takeaways that you want to share with the audience that you want them to remember?
Key takeaway I would like to deliver that customers need the households need customized approach. One solution cannot be fit for all households. Here, social mechanism needs in place for the needs of vulnerable people. More subsidized, more concessional laws for their needs, but for the other customers, standardized for their regions, for their revenue, for their interest to integrate the rooftop solar technology in their systems. Here, mandatory some degree of mandatory requirements are very important here. I think so, especially for new buildings. For challenges that the buildings face is mainly architectural rooftop architecture, which doesn't bear the weight of the solar technologies. There are lighter. Yes, I know that there are lighter options, but their efficiency is smaller. That's what it reduces the potential of aligning or integrating the full capacity, reduces the capacity. That's why I would suggest mandatory application of the for new buildings on rooftops, but covering the other buildings, existing buildings within national renovation programs, and study the best practices of the European and Asian countries, how they dealt with existing buildings. It's a really challenge, but it needs investment, annual investment from the government, and also customer behavior, changing the awareness, increasing awareness and changing the customer behavior.
Thank you. Yeah. Samira?
I won't take much time. So in perspective of Sri Lanka, I will give two examples. So during 2025, if we take the electricity energy mix, we have used 12% of oil to generate oil-based generation, but the cost is 40% out of the total generation cost. This year, we have utilized on 18% of energy from oil-based generation, but 50% of the cost of the total cost has been incurred for that generation. So that's the situation in Sri Lanka. So whatever the country, not only Sri Lanka, if you can be independent from imported fossil fuels, we are using two fossil fuels, one is coal and one is liquid fuel. So I was talking about the liquid fuel. So if we can be independent from, if we can deplete that generation, I mean, go away from oil generation, so we can be more resilient, we can prepare, make a more resilient energy system, as well as in our country perspective, industries are demanding a constant, I mean, stable tariff, because our tariff is highly volatile because we are depending on imported fuel. So if we can make an independent system, then we can increase the investors' confidence on our tariff, and we can make a tariff stable as well as make it more reliable. So I think that perspective will be applicable for any country. So the key takeaway is diversification should be done, but we have to focus on to be more independent from fossil fuel imports or any other factors. And if we can be self-sufficient, then we can make the tariff stable and make it more reliable.
Excellent thoughts. Atsu, closing thoughts?
So my message is simple. So we are living in the time of the dynamism, like the diversification and the decentralization. And we often hear from our client that this is a kind of the headache. But I believe we can take this as an opportunity to make our world better, cleaner, and also more resilient.
Thank you. Nikhil?
Yeah, I think, yeah, the time is sort of now, especially from an urban perspective, so that we don't, for more coordinated action, so that we don't miss out on opportunities, and, you know, we don't typically lock in infrastructure, both on the energy and the urban design side. So there's really, the time is now to have coordinated action. And also it will help leverage from both parties, say from the power sector and the urban, there are urban programs which can be leveraged through, there are big national programs which have the funding, the capacity on both sides can be leveraged, the knowledge, and so the intelligence and the data that we spoke about. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. I hope we've made the case to you that, in fact, diversification alone is necessary but insufficient. You need it to be combined with decentralized architecture, which then brings along a whole host of important technologies, the integration between the supply side, the demand side, the consumer, and the utility. But when we do these things together, we actually can have energy security, energy sovereignty, affordability, climate resilience, all the things that we're looking for, that combination that we have to address in this very uncertain and volatile world. So thank you all for your attention. Thanks my panelists. Sorry, go ahead.
The session. Thank you very much for the question, Eugen Rinsen. The main law was adopted in 2020 year. Until today, the legislative framework were developed. It's almost done, but few still under, just very few under development. Legislative framework which is under development, but it doesn't hinder the adoption, the implementation of mandatory energy audits in the country. As of now, four companies already accredited for conducting the energy audits in the country, and from early this year, we were allowed to operate as an energy audit company in the market. But I would say that our main job is aware our customers what's the value of the energy audit, what will be main services and products that will be delivered to them, and what's the value of delivering. Also, it's mandatory, but we act as a information raising and awareness raising at this stage of the year. I believe, and also the customers are very much interested because of the size of the buildings and which is changed, and the value, the cost of the services, how much will it take to them, and they are budgeting the sum. Probably toward the end of the year, we will be more active with orders. But as of now, we were mainly involved in awareness raising and information provision session.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, wait, we have one more question from the audience. We're going to go over time. That's okay. Go ahead. It's great to have audience participation.
Leong Yuan Yung from Malaysia. My question is for Samira. You mentioned, you talked about the first and second lines of defense during the Sri Lanka blackout, but you didn't discuss about the third line of defense, which is about islanding. So I wonder why. Is it because the option was not available, or was it because it was not feasible?
You mean being the island? Yeah, being an island, we have that problem because we are not interconnected with any other region of the country. And we are planning, in our plans, we have proposed the interconnection, HVDC interconnection with India. So during the blackout, we didn't have such support from any other interconnection. So that's why we couldn't control the system and we couldn't prevent the blackout. So hopefully, once the interconnection comes up, we can do it. And on top of that, now we are planning to implement storage systems. So through the storage systems, we are planning to give more stability to the system, because currently, by that time, we didn't have any battery energy storage system. Yeah. On the other hand, we didn't have any other storage options even. So in that case, now we are planning, we are expecting to implement some storage systems so that we can make our system more stable during this kind of unstable situations. I hope I answered your question.
Great. Are there any other audience questions? This is great. All right, I know we're sitting between you and a wonderful reception that ADV is hosting at the Staff Hub, which is right around the corner and down. I really want to thank my panelists. This has been an excellent discussion. I want to thank all the delegates in the audience for your attention and focus and great questions. And, you know, it's our future to make happen. So let's go do it. Thank you.